Hi everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. Today I'm going to talk about the coronavirus situation again. Trust me, I don't want to keep talking about the coronavirus situation. I do really want to start producing more content on operations and logistics, but I do realize that this is something that is affecting probably all of you dropshippers or people who do China fulfillment or just fulfillment in general. And this is going to be quite an important update because I'm going to be talking about some of the recent delays and cost increases and how you should deal with it. This is up to date as of March 31st, 2020. Now, the situation is always changing. So, up to date now, I do think that I'm going to try to make this my last update video. So I'm going to keep posting additional updates in our Facebook group and our EcommOps group. So check out the link below. I'm going to share a post where I'm going to continue to provide more up-to-date updates on the situation. It's probably my last video on the coronavirus situation. So if you want more information, please join our group and follow it there. All right, so today we're going to talk about a quick update on the situation itself as of March 31st, 2020. We are going to talk about the general impact on the logistics chain, the supply chain. We're going to talk about how epacket and other shipping methods out of China are going to be affected by this. And of course, we're going to talk about what I think you should be doing right now to react to the situation. Starting with a quick update on the current situation, accurate as of March 31st, 2020. So in China, thank you for the concern, everyone, clients and friends, but the China situation is very much stable. The area Wuhan, where the epicenter was, is still somewhat restricted, but it's really starting to recover. Factories are starting to recover, fulfillment is starting to recover, and generally speaking, there's really no concern on the China side of things. However, as factories are still ramping up, as demand goes up and capacity is still keeping up, do still expect some certain delays. Now, one thing that we are noticing though, that certain factories are extremely backed up for some products. Now, this is why, right? Because typically speaking, during this period, the March, April period, there are a very clear set of categories that usually do very well. For example, Easter products or spring type products, even travel products start trending up right now. So factories have been preparing for those things, and all of those are just not working right now. On the other hand, there are some categories that are doing extremely well. Now, I'm not going to recommend any products or really recommend any categories, but some of it might be obvious, but certain categories are doing very well. But this also means that there is extreme demand for these type of products, and factories were just not prepared for it. So certain product categories are doing really hot right now. You might know what they are, and those type of factories are extremely backlogged. Backlogged from anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes for certain products 2 months, 3 months. We have a product that is literally backlogged until July. So, again, just expect some certain factory backlogs because the category mix of sales right now is very different than it usually would be if the coronavirus was not happening. Now, outside of China, I don't have to tell everyone this, but China is no longer the problem in terms of the outbreak. The outbreak is really starting to be what has been a pandemic for the last couple of weeks, and it's only looking to get worse. So we won't talk too much about that because the news is always changing. But hope everyone out there is safe. Hope you guys are practicing social distancing and proper hygiene, and hope that we try to slow this down and hopefully recover from as soon as possible. But again, the point here now is that the epidemic is really no longer something that is causing issues with China, but rather a lot in the rest of the world. Now, one thing that China has unfortunately done is protect itself, because now the China cases have gone way down. It's recovering. However, it is obviously at a very strong risk of an outbreak occurring again with travelers kind of coming back to China. So it actually sets some extremely strict rules in terms of airlines. So the formal ruling is that per airline, they can only plan for one route in and out of China per week. I mean, that's crazy actually. Passenger flights have been canceled left and right, but having that kind of restriction is extreme, to say the least. And not only that, by the way, there has been a ruling that's not as formal, that is not as publicly broadcasted that flight crews and planes actually have to go a quarantine period when they go in China, so that planes can't even leave as fast as good as they possibly could. So this entire situation has really made what was a awful passenger flight cancellation situation in China even worse. And now this is actually government mandated. Now, thankfully, as of now, two lines have not been super affected. So Hong Kong flights look like there's still a lot of cancellations, but they don't fall within this tight ruling. We won't talk about the geopolitics here, but Hong Kong essentially has a separate form of government from China, so it doesn't actually have to follow the same laws. And then generally speaking, freight lines are actually still running. They're actually running at overcapacity, and we'll talk about that a little bit soon. Now, local fulfillment is starting to really feel strains, and it's starting to prioritize essential items. So here's some letters from Amazon and ShipBob. So both of them, without reading them out loud, they're really saying that they are prioritizing essential items, health-related items. And Amazon has actually even shut down intake of new inventory for third-party fulfillment, third-party sellers that fulfill through Amazon without, that aren't. And Amazon has even actually paused intake for new inventory from third-party sellers for fulfillment that do not fulfill essential needs. Now, at first, this was supposed to be a good thing for dropshippers, right? Because we were thinking that if Amazon sellers can't compete anymore, they can't ship out, then this is a great thing for dropshippers because Amazon tends to be one of your biggest competitors. And I'll talk a little bit why that is really not the case when we talk about the freight capacity. But either way, local fulfillment is expecting delays as well. So, expect that too. Now, that being said, last time we talked about there was a prediction that e-commerce is going to go up in general from this. Now, e-commerce has not completely recovered, but definitely speaking, it is starting to increase. Now, to be fair, it's not the same categories as you would expect during this period, but certain categories are doing very well. And again, I know this because I deal with lots of clients. We do a ton of volume orders on a daily basis, and our volume has actually increased through this time. But again, not the same types of products you would usually expect. And this is not a product recommendation video, so we won't go into talking about what those categories might be. All right, so let's talk about the general impact on the logistics chain. Again, accurate as of March 31st, 2020. So anything that depends on passenger flights are delayed. So I talked about this last time. Don't use epacket, and even more so, don't use epacket now. Now, some of you might have heard that epacket has started to clear some of its backlog through using sea freight. Now, don't take this as positive news. Sure, things are starting to move again, but really it's because their service is just so backed up. They have no other choice. Sea freight used for consumer packages is very different than high volume sea freight. Door-to-door epacket sea freight, you're looking at maybe 60 days, maybe more, maybe less, but you're looking at crazy delays, and I'm sure your customers are not going to be happy with that. So, again, just because things are moving by sea freight, this is not good news at all. All right, so let's talk about freight capacity. Freight capacity is extremely overloaded now. Expect delays and also increased costs, by the way. So let me tell you why, right? Because with all the plane cancellations that used to carry a lot of freight, they're all trying to use freight lines and just freight planes in general. Now, remember when I told you guys about Amazon is not accepting third-party fulfillment intake anymore for non-essential goods? Well, we thought it was a good thing, but what these sellers did, and by the way, most of these sellers are from China, is that they started using freight lines, direct freight lines, like Yunexpress, for example, to deliver their Amazon orders. They're losing money on it, but they want to maintain their Amazon account, and they're sitting on inventory that's losing them even more money if they don't actually sell it or send it out, right? And then you have that, you have Aliexpress, you have drop shippers, and then finally, don't forget that there are a lot of medical supplies and just supplies in general and just basic necessities going out of China. So all of these things put together are really overloading these freight lines. So, demand is far outreaching supply, so that's causing delays, and it's causing increased costs as well. And then now, because what we talked about the China flight restrictions, Hong Kong is going to be the most reliable freight route out of China. Hong Kong doesn't have the same restrictions. Hong Kong, generally speaking, is a center of freight. So around all of China, they might be kind of like really overloading their freight networks. And honestly, sometimes their freight planes are seeing more and more delays because of quarantine or cleaning procedures. But Hong Kong is going to be the most reliable one going forward. So whatever you're using, the closer you are to Hong Kong, if your supplier or seller is in Shenzhen, sending through Hong Kong, the better. That's not to say that nothing is working anywhere else, but again, it's all relative, right? I think that Hong Kong is going to be the most reliable form during this crisis. Again, we talked about post offices before. Just today, I saw this article about coronavirus shuts down mail service from some Greenwich Village residents that's in New York City. The article says that they're running at 25 or 50% capacity, and they're still working because legally speaking, USPS is supposed to work during this period, but some packages have been stuck for a week because of the lower capacity. Now, look, let's not blame USPS workers. I mean, they're working really hard to try to get packages out to you and to your customers. But at the end of the day, this is a global pandemic. So you are going to start seeing more and more of these situations where, these post offices, these fulfillment centers, they really try to serve you, but during a health crisis, there are going to be limitations. So I don't think that you need to be worried about everything is going to be completely stuck, except maybe in some situations we'll talk about, but do expect delays. All right, so what does this actually mean? How does this actually affect things? So let's talk about delays here. I'm going to talk about 4 categories of shipping lines. And we'll talk about what the current delays are and roughly the cause of delays as well. We're only talking about things going out of Hong Kong right now, and things are a little bit different across the country. I personally believe that Hong Kong is going to be in the best situation. But again, the situation is always going to be different depending on exactly where you're at and your supplier situation. So make sure you confirm with your own supplier. ePacket, unknown delays, indefinite delays. You could get lucky and some get made out, but just avoid if at all possible. And this is really caused by the combination of flight cancellations and also obviously local post delays, but mostly because of the flight cancellations. Aliexpress Standard shipping, it still works, by the way. So if you're using Aliexpress, use Aliexpress Standard shipping. But expect delays of anywhere between 3 to 10 days. And that's, of course, assuming your seller actually has stock and not tricking you and printing out tracking numbers early, right? And this is because of freight backlog and also local post office delays. Express lines, so like Yunexpress, SF Express, CNE, these are starting to see delays as well. These are usually highly reliable and very consistent even in Q4, but they are seeing delays because of this very unique situation of roughly 1 to 4 days, maybe a little bit more. And that's kind of split up in 2 ways. So one, the freight capacity is restricted. So even express lines have to wait in line to get on planes going through Hong Kong or wherever on the freight line. So on that part of it, you're probably seeing either no delay or maybe up to 2 days delays. But once it gets to the US, once it gets to wherever, you're going to see some delays because custom processing is going to be slower, USPS is going to be slower, DHL is going to be slower, and that's just the nature of what's going on right now, right? I mean, things are at much lower capacity because of the lockdowns, because of the coronavirus situation. And then finally, regular freight lines. So Yunexpress regular SF, maybe stuff like Yanwen, for example. That's seeing some delays as well, 2 to 6 days or so, maybe a little bit more depending on the country. And again, kind of a similar situation as the Yunexpress Express line, some delays getting on the plane, but then also some delays when it arrives in its destination country because of less capacity there. Keep in mind that these are on top of what the usual shipping times are. I'm not going to go through the exact shipping times for every single country, every single service, but just whatever you used before, whatever you're expected before, plan to add these delays. And also, things are changing, so don't be surprised if these increase over time. Now, there are going to be additional delays for some countries, which we'll list out here, okay? So Canada is going to be the worst one. There is an extreme freight backlog and also local post delays. And out of the fact that Canada is a very large country and there's a lot of local flight cancellations as well. So we're looking at 7 to 10 day delays. That's, by the way, on top of the normal times and on top of the delays that we just talked about, right? So just do the math yourself, and it depends on your shipping service. So Canada is going to be severely delayed. Australia is getting delayed as well, looking at maybe 1 to 4 days, maybe more in some areas. Extreme freight backlog and also large country, a lot of local airline delays and cancellations. So even just moving around Australia, the packages are getting slowed down. Italy and France are a little bit of a unique situation because there are a lot of regions that are working actually completely fine, but there's going to be certain regions that face certain indefinite delays, lockdown regions, certain zip codes. So I'm not going to list it all out over here, but just be aware you're going to have certain areas within these countries that might just be stuck for a little bit because their postal service might be literally down for a week or more than that. And then finally, Germany, Austria, Belgium, and Netherlands. So we are starting to see additional delays from these countries. And there's nothing official yet, but it just seems like they are really over capacity. People processing customs, people handing it off to DHL, for example. That seems to be a lot slower than before, and what we believe it is that due to the lockdowns, due to increased awareness of the disease and decreased staff capacity, everything is just less efficient. Please note though that these are changing literally every single day. Things are lagging right now because whatever I tell you right now, things are going to change in a week or 2 weeks. It might be better, it might be worse, especially local post office delays. I tell you about delays right now, but your package is supposed to get there in 2 weeks, so really the delays hit you 2 weeks from now. I will keep you guys updated on this in our group. Make sure you click on the link below, join our group, and I'll give you guys updates as soon as we hear them. And then, by the way, so again, to my point, don't forget, delay estimates are always lagging. Tracking numbers are always lagging. Packages are always lagging. So I'll give you guys the perfect example of this. So we'll compare tracking sent 2 weeks ago. On the left are express line packages sent before April 20th. I mean, that's literally a little bit more than 10 days ago. And they all arrived in 5 to 8 days. A little bit slower than usual because sometimes it's kind of 1 day later than usual, but still, I mean, that looked completely normal. At that time, everything seemed fine. And then now let's look at express line packages on the right, sent out on or after March 20th. Now we're looking at 10 days, from 5 to 8 days to 10 days, and we actually see one that, on the very top there's one that's actually just stuck with USPS. It's in LA. It's in LA since the 24th, and there's no movement. Again, might be a USPS delay. I talk about these delays in my group. I tell clients, and a lot of you tell me, hey, you know what? Like, my supplier just sent me these tracking numbers, or, I've been sending out packages fine. There's no delays at all. Well, look, it doesn't matter if your packages were sent out 2 weeks ago and they got here now. What matters are the delays happening right now, happening the last week, happening the next week, the next 2 weeks. Be really, really careful. It doesn't mean that you need to be overly concerned, but just be logical when you think about this. Don't think nothing is happening. Don't think that delays are just me trying to scare everyone just because your supplier gave you great tracking numbers from 10 days ago. Just keep that in mind. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to shut down your business, but just use it as a data point to plan effectively. And then finally, costs. All right, so costs have increased a massive amount for all freight lines. I'm going to talk about Yunexpress here because we use them the most. Started since before January or so. Yunexpress has raised their prices by $7 to $15 per kilogram, depending on the line and country. That's a huge amount, by the way, especially if you're selling a heavier item. I mean, just do the math, right? If you're literally selling an item that weighs 1 kilogram, then depending on the country, you're paying $7 to $15 more than what you would have if not for this situation. So a lot of you guys have asked me like, oh, is my supplier trying to mess with me? They've been increasing my prices. No, trust me. We're not making more money from these price increases. Yunexpress is not making more money from these price increases. It hurts all of us. It's really just because of supply and demand. The demand is way too high. There's not enough plane space. And by the way, I really strongly believe that this is a good thing that freight lines are doing. Because if they don't bid up the price, it means they will never be competitive. So that's what happened to epacket, by the way. I mean, epacket, technically speaking, they could have maybe used some freight lines, but they didn't increase the price. They couldn't be competitive in bidding on this space. So now they're all stuck. So, be careful actually if you're working with a freight line that hasn't increased prices. You're going to have a bad time because they're not going to have freight capacity because they're not going to be competitive and, they're really not going to get it on time. Now, however, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We've been speaking with Yunexpress very, very closely, and we do know that they're planning for reserved freight capacity, like literally reserved flights for their services, really focusing on the US and the EU, but also limited service to Canada and Australia as well. Now, the details are still a little bit unclear, but it sounds like to us that they'll literally have entire planes or entire sections of planes reserved for them, only for their customers, only for their packages. Now, this is supposed to go in effect in April, sometime in April. Now, the details are still going to be impossible to predict right now, but I would imagine that this hopefully would stabilize the prices somewhat and also be able to address a lot of the freight delays on the China side. Now, so let's talk about what I personally think for the future. I don't think it's really all bad. And again, things are changing on a daily basis. I think that there's 3 scenarios in the near term. By near term, I talk about the next couple of weeks, next month or 2 or so. So the first scenario, I think, is that things are just stabilizing now. The delays are going to stay for a while. So just kind of expect the shipping times, expect these costs for the near foreseeable future. That is possible until the virus situation improves. Now, the second scenario is much more optimistic, but I think very realistic as well, is that as everyone has seen in the last week or 2, there has been just incredible shock everywhere. Companies are trying to deal with these lockdowns. USPS is trying to deal with the situation. People are getting used to the current state of the world right now. So I'm going to compare a little bit to what actually happened in China. So in China, for the first week or 2, everything was really, really crazy. And then everyone had to stay home for 2-3 weeks longer. But during that period, people got used to it. Postal services started running effectively. Everything started getting better. So this is what I'm saying, is that it is very possible that we are going through the worst of it, or maybe the worst of it is still coming the next week. But it is very possible that as the lockdown stabilize, people are still going to stay at home, but people get used to the situation, everything is going to get more and more efficient. And then finally, this is the worst case, things just get worse. The outbreaks get worse, delays get worse. This becomes, really just a global tragedy in multiple ways than one. Now, obviously, that is possible, and I think that if it gets to that point where it just gets worse and worse, we probably have more important things to worry about than shipping. So these are the 3 scenarios that I see. I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't predict the future. But that being said, I do think a positive scenario number 2, where things get better soon, is very realistic. And again, to stay up to date, join the group and I'll keep sending out updates. All right, so I don't want to be just doom and gloom. Here are my thoughts on what you should be doing now to react if you're affected by this for whatever reason, if you're fulfilling from China, if you're dropshipper or whatever. So first, if you're using AliExpress, use AliExpress Standard shipping. Well, you could use DHL, you could use like Yanwon special line, but those are going to be more expensive. But for affordable shipping, use AliExpress Standard shipping. It is going to be the most reliable right now because it is technically a freight line and AliExpress controls that line. Definitely find an agent as soon as possible. We are an agent. I'll put my info in the description. So if you have consistent orders of 50 orders per day, check out our website and we'll be happy to talk to you. If you are using an agent, use Yunexpress. We evaluated multiple services, and right now Yunexpress going out of Hong Kong is going to be the most effective. Yunexpress going out of Shanghai and Yiwu is not too bad, only to certain countries. To Netherlands and Belgium is actually pretty good. But otherwise, try to use Yunexpress and try to use Yunexpress going through Shenzhen into Hong Kong using Hong Kong freight lines. That's going to be the most reliable right now. There are other special lines. This is what we use. We evaluated a bunch. This is what we think is best. Now, every situation is different. Depends on where your supplier is based. Depends on your product maybe. Depends on where you're sending it. So this is not 100% the only method. If you have an agent that has some other method, feel free to consider it, but this is just my recommendation. Manage your customer expectations. Everyone is going to understand. I mean, think about it. Everyone are in the middle of these lockdowns. They're going to know if their local USPS office is not working. Look, I live in the US right now. And Amazon Prime, Amazon Prime, normally speaking, the bastion of fast, reliable shipping, Amazon Prime is even broken right now. People understand, but you must communicate with them, okay? Talk about how, look, during the current situation, we are sending out orders, we are processing them, but there might be delays, especially if you're in a region that's more affected. People will get it. Over communicate with your customers. And look, if you're getting like 5 to 8 day shipping before through us, don't say you're going to get 5 to 8 day shipping anymore. Set an expectation, say that it's going to take longer, and just make sure you manage your customers effectively. And then finally, a couple other points to be careful about. And these actually normally apply during normal times too, but even more so now. So first, try to sell products that are lighter in weight for cheaper shipping, because the increases in costs are actually based on weight. So for example, a certain country has $10 increase per kilogram. So if you're selling something that's a kilogram, you're going to get a $10 increase in shipping. Whereas if you're selling something that's 100 grams, that's only $1 increase. If you have a hot product, be willing to pay more for faster stock. I mean, some of these products are so hot right now. The factories are backed up. And if you're going to just try to talk down the price, try to get your agent to get the cheapest price possible, you're going to get 15-day, you're going to get 30-day lead time before your agent even gets a hold of it. So if your agent tells you, hey, look, would you be willing to pay $2 more, $3 more so you can get it in 5 days as opposed to 20 days? I guess it's your decision, right? If you want it faster, then you should probably be willing to pay your agent more to get that product in stock so you can send it to your customers. When you're evaluating kind of delays, get recent tracking numbers. Having a supplier give you tracking numbers from 2 weeks ago and shows that, oh, they all arrived yesterday, that doesn't matter because the delays have been getting worse and worse. Try to get tracking numbers from like 5 days ago and see, hey, has it left China, right? Is it stuck somewhere? Even if it's not fully delivered, just get an understanding of what the situation is. And then finally, over communicate with your supplier or with your agent. The situation is always changing. They should have the most up-to-date information. So over communicate, ask them what's going on. For myself, obviously, I try to over communicate because I try to post in the group whenever there's kind of new delays and prices. So follow the group for that information. But again, every supplier situation is going to be different. So over communicate to make sure that your supply chain is maybe not smooth, but at least working as well as possible. Now, all this being said, I would really like to add a little bit more of a positive note to things. And again, I want to repeat myself. Some people are doing really well right now. It does not mean that you should completely get out of dropshipping. You should completely give up. You might need to test different types of products. You might need to test products that fulfill a need right now. I'm not going to recommend any, but just think about it. You have to just be more careful. Understand potential delays, understand cost increases, message to your customers accordingly. And overall, all these things that you just got to be more careful about. Actually, these are important things to run a store in general, but especially now, you got to be more cognizant of these things. So that's it, not the greatest news. Try to make this my final video update on the coronavirus situation unless something truly disastrous or maybe something amazing happens. But I am going to keep sending updates to my Facebook group, so please join below. And I am going to start making more videos though, and talking about operations and logistics in general, and maybe other things kind of dealing with dropshipping fulfillment in the situation other than just these updates. So if you like what you see, please like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell button so you get notifications as well. And then finally, we are a premium fulfillment service. If you're interested in us, now note we do have a 50 order per day minimum. You do have that and you're looking to scale and work with the best, we have our link below, so check us out and we'll be happy to talk to you. Alright everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys next time.